So this is part 2 of the PRS-style semi-hollow guitar that I've been building. It's constructed out of mahogany, maple, and paduk, well, at least thus far. This section, or this part of the build, I'll be showing you construction of the bookmatched quilted maple top, and I'll finish routing everything. I'll route the neck and pickup cavities, the shell for the control cavity plate or back. I don't know what would it be called. I guess cover. That'd be an appropriate term. And then how everything's glued up, and it will basically be done by the time this video is over. And I promise it won't all be still pictures, but I thought it'd be nice to kind of show you where we left off last time. And of course, you can check out part 1 at the link below. Yeah, let's get started. So here I'm preparing to glue up the quilted maple top, and because my old out-of-date counter is not level, I've decided to do it on this piece of MDF. And what you see I'm doing, I'm just making sure that it's actually flat and square. Look at the quilt on that maple. I bought this stock from a place out in Oregon and had it shipped. And it's pretty much dimensioned. The only thing that I've had to do so far, which I didn't actually show, which I actually didn't film, is the joining of the edges that I'll be putting together. So at this point, I'm just kind of looking to see how I want to glue it up, what would look the nicest, how can I best match up the book matching. That was a pun, matching up the book matching. And in terms of the wood, you'll see this flexing. That's because of the humidity changes. That's something that's not a big deal. Once I glue it up, it works itself out. This wood's actually been sitting out. I got it about 2 weeks prior to this glue up, and I let it acclimate, but it's still got a little bit of flex in it. So I'm going to show you this technique that I learned. I'd like to say that I invented it, but I learned this from watching other videos online. And it's a really clever way to glue up these really thin boards and book match them without using any sort of mechanical clamps, which would be kind of tricky. So what you do is you just prop up one edge like this, and once you've glued them, and then you stretch. It's real simple. You just stretch the masking tape and leave. You'll notice there's a little gap. I'm not sticking it entirely to the board. I'm leaving a gap where the two boards meet, and it'll make sense in a minute when I show you that once you put the tape down and you flatten the board, it kind of works as a spring clamp to hold it all together. The key here is that if you've joined the edges really well so that they're nice and flush and tight, you don't need a whole lot of pressure to get a good glue up. See, it just slides together, and that tape now, because I left that gap, is pulling the two pieces of wood together really tightly. Here I'm just cleaning off a little excess glue so I don't have to do it later. It's always a pain. This is a little bit wasteful, but I'm going to throw this wax paper away. Look at the quilting on that. In some angles, you can really still see the quilting. In others, it looks fairly plain, but that's generally what it's going to look like. Actually, more accentuated once I finish it. So overnight, I left some weights on it to keep it nice and flat. Make sure it didn't bow while it was drying. And now it's just a matter of taking the tape off and making sure everything glued up okay. Now it's just a matter of cutting out the basic shape of the guitar on the bandsaw. I didn't mention, I don't know if I mentioned it in the last video, but I absolutely love this bandsaw. I bought it for actually about a year ago. I bought it for myself for my birthday. And it just works really nice. If you're a woodworker and you've noticed that I haven't dropped the guard down, I just wasn't paying attention, and so it's probably not as safe as it should be. Those bearings should probably be closer. There shouldn't be that much exposed blade, but what are you gonna do? So here's the body and the top, and sort of the first joining of them. Really exciting to see this happen, actually. And there's a couple things going on here. First, I just want to make sure everything fits. And you'll see I've got my clear acrylic F-hole template. But before I use it, I'm using my body template because I want to do a couple things. I want to mark where I'm able to put in screws. So I want to screw this top to the body. When I glue it, that'll allow for fewer clamps, and it'll actually make sure that it's aligned. I also use this body to sort of eyeball to make sure where I'm going to put the F-hole. So the worst case scenario would be cutting into the top and putting the F-hole, and then have the body underneath poking through the F-hole. That would be a disaster. You can see I actually drew in the hollow space on the top of the guitar, and now I'm drawing sort of roughly where I want to put the F-hole. What you'll see in a second is I actually created a different, here it is, I created a different router template so that there was more meat for the router to write on. This was actually fairly terrifying. This wood is gorgeous, and it was not cheap. Had it shipped from Oregon. I don't remember if it was Oregon or Washington, but it wasn't cheap. And so there's obviously a fear that it's going to be destroyed in the process of routing it. What I'm doing here is I'm simply taping the top to the body, just to keep it in place. Because it's so easy to move, I just want to keep it in place when I lock it down with these screws. Just in the process of drilling holes and screwing things, it's easy to shift things over just ever so slightly. So I just want to keep it in place so that I can attach it with these screws, and then I pull off the tape and I won't have to worry about it. It's not really meant to be a clamp or anything like that. I don't know why I feel compelled to add the countersink piece, because none of the routing was near these screws, particularly during glue up. It doesn't really matter, but for some reason I did. And this is an exciting but scary moment when I'm actually gluing the top to the body, because there's probably, I don't know, I'm not going to guess, but there's a lot of man hours that have gone into getting everything to this point so that it could finally be put together. And if I were to somehow mess up here, it wouldn't be catastrophic. Well, it would be catastrophic, but it wouldn't be unfixable. The worst case scenario, I could just run the body through a planer and lose the top, and then just start a new top again. If anything, that would just cost money and time, but you really don't want that to happen. This wood is getting more and more scarce, so you hate to waste anything. You hate to waste the money. You hate to waste the effort and time that you put into it. So it's a little scary, but it's also very exciting to finally kind of be at this step. One of the weird things that you'll notice is that I actually clean out the hollow spots inside the guitar. These are spots that nobody will ever see, but for some reason I feel compelled to do it. Yeah, there I am. I didn't clean the other one, so that's good. I'm not totally compulsive. So here, this is why I use these screws. Once you start gluing things up, it gets real slippery and easy for things to shift. So by screwing this into the body, I know for certain, because I've already aligned everything, that the top will be in alignment with the body where I want it to be. Then I can use clamps and all the other areas to clamp down really nicely. But this will just make sure that the top is in place. And the key was that I put these screws where I'll eventually route out the pickup cavities. So I've removed the screws, everything's glued down, a little time lapse. It's probably been a day or two since I last glued it. And here I am just routing the top flush with the body. This is super satisfying. I don't know why, but there's something really nice about using a flush trim bit like this and routing the top nice and flush to the body. Although you'll notice that there is some fray. I don't know there's probably a technical term, and a woodworker probably will see this and give me some sort of specialized term, but it's not perfectly smooth. Part of that's because my router bits could be sharper. Part of it because I'm working with highly quilted maple and highly figured wood that just has a tendency to tear out. So I'll take care of all that on the sander. So here what I'm doing, I have a piece of mahogany, and I'm going to make the the back plate for the control cavity. I don't know why I can't think of that word. And I'm sort of I'm doing my best to line up the wood for the mahogany plate that I'll be making out of, lining up the grain so that it matches the grain of the actual guitar. It's not going to be perfect, but it'd just be nice for it to be in the general ballpark. What you're looking at there is a little template I made to make these back plates. So essentially I'll use a router bit with the bearing on the bottom, and it will just follow that template to cut it out. This is a cool little trick. I also learned this on the internet from a place called Crimson Guitars. And essentially what you do, instead of having to clamp things or use double-sided tape, which is kind of a pain to get off, here you put masking tape down, and then you apply super glue, and then just glue the tape to the tape. When you're ready to pull it off, it comes off a little bit easier. It holds it in place really nicely, and then you just pull the masking tape off, which is easier to get off than the double-sided tape that people usually do when they're doing these sort of routing projects. There you go, one mahogany backplate. The downside is that sometimes you still have a little bit extra glue that hasn't totally cured, particularly when you do something really quickly like that, and then you end up getting super glue on your fingers. And I do that a lot, and I hate it. I genuinely hate it. This is the template that I made to route out the neck cavity and the pickup cavity, the bridge pickup cavity. So I'm using that super glue trick again, and very carefully, this is critical that it's in alignment, very carefully making sure that it's lined up appropriately so that everything will work out. I don't know if I've mentioned it, but you may have noticed from previous videos that this is a new router. I splurged. It's super nice. It's just a lot easier on these tight little areas to use a smaller router than the big router that I was previously using. Yeah, I'm being very delicate because I don't want to get more super glue on my fingers. I ended up doing it anyways, and what's worse is when you get the super glue on your fingers and you also get the sawdust, so then you have sawdust super glued to your fingers. It drives me nuts. But it happens, it's almost unavoidable. It's strange, and from this perspective you don't see that quilting as intensely, but it's there. And when I stain it, it's going to be amazing. And I say that not as though I'm bragging. It's the wood. I'm not doing anything. It kind of feels weird to say that, but it's really the wood. It's not me. This is the template that I made to route out the little shelf that the control plate, I keep saying control plate, the back plate for the control cavity rest on. And more super glue. Or CA glue if you want to be technical. I think super glue is a brand. This is Gorilla Glue. Same difference. Here it's not as critical that I line everything perfectly. I just want to make sure that I leave room for the screws, and that they won't, they'll have enough wood. Do is final sanding, rounding over the corners, drilling access for the wiring to go from the pickup cavities to the control cavity, and drilling out the input jack. So thanks a lot for watching, and if you missed part 1, be sure to check out the link below. Hopefully I'll be able to make some progress on the neck, and I'll make some videos of that and post those as I guess part 3. It just depends on the weather. It's been a bit weird. It's kind of shifted between being really cold and really hot and humid here, so that's not a good time to build a neck, and I'm waiting for it to sort of stable out. But thanks a lot.